Hi, welcome to option C for week 2. So week 2, again, still in the Romantic period, but this is the week where you get to choose your own adventure. So option C, as you hopefully realize, is voices from outside England. So the Romantic period, the Regency period, the reign of George III, and so on and so on, was a time of major sort of British expansion across the globe. So a little bit of background and context for this. We have some major events just before the Romantic period begins. So mid-18th century, we have what's called the 7 Years' War, which goes from 1756 up through 1763, more generally known in the U.S. as the French and Indian War, which actually begins in 1754, but totally different story. So the 7 Years' War, Britain takes on France primarily, but also Spain and some other countries are involved, the Netherlands and so on and so on. The main antagonists are Britain and France. Britain defeats the French and gets Canada. Britain gets all of India. India becomes sort of uncontestedly Britain's colony. Get a number of Caribbean islands and get some properties in Africa. So we have this massive expansion of the British Empire fairly quickly. We also have troubles closer to home. In 1745, there is a major uprising in Scotland, led by Bonnie Prince Charlie. We're getting a little too far back in British history with this. So basically, Bonnie Prince Charlie was what was called the pretender to the throne. So he had a legal claim to be the king of Britain, but it wasn't a claim that he was able to enforce. And the last major attempt of the Stuart dynasty, of the Stuarts, who had been exiled to France in 1688, this was their last real sort of shot at power. In 1745, there's an uprising in Scotland. A number of the Highland clans rally to Prince Charles, Bonnie Prince Charlie, who comes down and basically has a war with the English. The Scots lose, and the upshot of it is that Highland culture, Scottish culture, is basically abolished. Kilts are banned, tartan is banned, bagpipes are banned, the Highlanders are not legally allowed to own weapons, a number of Scottish songs are banned, all of this stuff. Basically just, it's an attempt to erase Scottish culture. And it works actually fairly well. There's a massive wave of immigration out of Scotland as people try and escape these sort of horribly oppressive conditions. And it's really not until the age of Queen Victoria where Scottish culture sort of re-emerges and comes back into its own, because Victoria and Albert had this sort of really kind of bizarre sort of love affair for Scotland. But during the Romantic era, we have at least two major voices who really sort of start to lay the seeds for repopularizing Scottish culture, and those are Robert Burns, who's the great Scottish poet, like the poet of Scotland, and Sir Walter Scott, who's a great novelist in the Romantic period, and he writes books like Rob Roy, which sort of romanticize and celebrate Scottish Highland culture, and Sir Walter Scott especially, but Robert Burns as well, sort of lay the foundation for the revitalization of Scottish culture in the Victorian era. Also at this time, close to home, under British control, is Ireland, and the Irish have long had an uneasy relationship with the British. Bad, very bloody history of English conquest of Ireland, domination of Ireland, and so on and so on, and wars for rebellion. So this is the Age of Revolution, and in 1798 there is a major uprising in Ireland, led by a fellow, a hero in Irish culture named Wolfe Tone, and they essentially they try and eliminate British colonial rule of Ireland. The rebellion fails. Obviously, Wolfe Tone himself is imprisoned, and he dies in prison. And you have a number of sort of repressive measures. The Irish were actually, in general, tended to support the French Revolution, and so the Irish sort of had this notion that actually Ireland and France have a long sort of history of being connected. The Irish tried to get sort of revolutionary France to send them some soldiers to help fight this war of independence. In 1798, it didn't really work. The French didn't send many people. So there's those fears. So England and the English are concerned about events in Scotland, although between about 1746, when Bonnie Prince Charlie's rebellion is defeated, and 1789, when we could say the Romantic period begins, Scotland is really quite pacified, and part of the reason that they're pacified, or part of the way that they're pacified, is that places like Edinburgh and Glasgow, which are the two largest cities in Scotland, become commercial centers, become cultural centers, and things like this. The Edinburgh Review becomes one of the biggest literary magazines and most important literary magazines in Britain. But there are concerns about Scottish culture, and there are still people who remember the 45, as that uprising was called. There are concerns about securities in Ireland and the fact that there's this rebellion in 1798. There's also concerns about rebellion from elsewhere. Again, the French Revolution kicks off in 1789 and really sort of picks up steam in 1793 when Louis XVI is executed. And so the British are very concerned, the English are very concerned about potential revolution at home. And so we have these two sort of major trends, these two major concerns. One is that the British Empire is expanding rapidly, and they're coming into control of new territories. They're coming into control of India, places in Africa, Canada, places in the Caribbean, Southeast Asia, all of this stuff. And so that's good, especially from a capitalist perspective, because it means new markets, it means new sources of raw materials, new trading partners, and all this. But it's also bad because there are all kinds of concerns about revolutionaries, there are all kinds of concerns about people bringing in new ideas, people challenging English culture, and potentially sort of overthrowing the English political, religious, cultural, and economic system. So in this reading list, we're going to explore some of those tensions. We're going to get people like Edmund Burke, who was very much an opponent of the French Revolution, but then also during the Romantic period we have people like Shelley, who's a major supporter of the French Revolution, Percy Bysshe Shelley. we get voices like Robert Burns, who is a Scottish nationalist in the sense that he supports Scottish culture, he supports the glorious military heritage, monarchical heritage of Scotland, as opposed to what he sort of dismisses as English financialization or English sort of monetarization, buying the Scots where they couldn't defeat them with the military. So those are some of the tensions that we're going to get in this reading list. Is this simultaneous sort of joy and pride in expanding the empire, and this fear of what's coming from the outside, even from within Britain itself, what's coming from outside England. And again, this reading list, and we talked about this earlier on when we talked about the geography of Britain, this reading list really depends on the distinction between England, which is this, and Britain, which is the whole thing. So